So Jura is the Shinju clone of Kawaki. That is the popular theory going around at the moment, and the funny thing is that I made a video on this very topic over 2 years ago. The signs were already there. Though given the more recent reveal about Jura being the embodiment of the Ten Tails, there seems to be a contradiction. Or is there really? There is a way all of this works as one theory, where Jura is both the embodiment of the Ten Tails and also a clone of Kawaki. You see, to understand why this makes sense, we first need to outline some important facts about these entities. One being the fact that we know for certain that these beings were created using the chakra of someone that was turned into a tree. This was confirmed by Ada in chapter 5 when she said that the chakra of the people who were devoured and turned into a tree by the Clogrimes created these guys. And this was later backed up by Boruto himself in chapter 14 while he was questioned about the Shinju. We can also see this in the design of the characters being very similar to that of the person they copied, along with manifesting their abilities such as Sasuke's Chidori, Moegi's Wood Release, and Shinki's Iron Sand. Now it doesn't end there because in chapter 5, it's revealed that they also share an even deeper connection, in that they possess an innate goal or instinct to consume the person closest to the being they copied. Jura believes that this is a side effect of them evolving differently, thus changing their instinctual drive, and that they should give in to it, which should in turn reveal their personal targets. This led to Matsuri revealing that she has the urge to consume Konohamaru, who of course is the childhood friend of Moegi, the person she copied. The same thing happened with Hidari and Sarada, Ryu and Gaara, etc, etc. You guys get the point. So what they all have in common is that they want to consume the person the cloned individual cared for the most, or had the deepest connection with. This of course then leads us to Jura, who mysteriously didn't have his counterpart revealed for a very long time, and that was done for a reason. You see, how I came to the conclusion that he was a clone of Kawaki and by extension Ishiki to some extent was by using the same logic employed for the other Shinju. Only in this case we're kinda working backwards because it was later revealed that his desire is to consume Naruto, which means that the person he copied had to have had a deep connection to Naruto, as it was for the other Shinju. Now as we know, it was later revealed that this is because Naruto had a deep connection to the Biju, and since all Bijus share a connection, whether it's the 9 Bijus connection to the Ten Tails or the connection that Ten Tails has to other Ten Tails, which was confirmed in this databook statement, Jura is able to connect with Naruto through that established link. Now one could say, why did it have to be Naruto? Why isn't Jura obsessed with consuming Hagoromo, the person who had an even deeper connection to the Tail Beast? Because even though Naruto has the respect of the Biju for the most part, he isn't that deeply connected to them outside of Kurama. Most of them don't even show up to the gathering place anymore, as opposed to Hagoromo, who had the love of the Biju and spent a much longer time with them. So is it because Hagoromo passed away? Well, we're not sure. I mean, based on what happened in the story, whether or not the person is considered to be alive isn't of consequence. Naruto, according to the public, which includes the Biju, died over 3 years ago, long before Jura was born. He exists in a timeless space that's also a sealed dimension. Yet Jura still wanted to consume him. That was his target. And we also know that the Shinju can't sense their targets, which is why Jura tried to track Naruto using the chakra of the Nine Tails, which then led him to Himawari. And even if you wanted to use the argument that, well, maybe because the Nine Tails chakra was around and that made him believe that Naruto was still alive as well, you could also use that argument for Hagoromo. He also had the Nine Tails inside him for a very long time, even longer than Naruto has. So why didn't he try to find Hagoromo instead of finding Naruto, both of whom are considered to be dead? Is it because Naruto has a deep connection to Kurama specifically? Possibly, but that would also apply to Hagoromo and even Killer Bee, who has a deep connection and an even longer connection to the Eight Tails. So the question again is, why Naruto? Well, that's where Kawaki comes in. You see, if Jura is both the embodiment of the Ten Tails, Shinju combination of Kawaki's essence, that would explain why it zeroed in on Naruto, since Kawaki is obsessed with Naruto. It isn't lost on us that the main villain's obsession is the same as Kawaki's, which makes for a very interesting parallel. One wants to consume him, while the other wants to protect him, which both stem from the same obsession. Now, to further justify this, let's look at some other things, such as physical appearance, which would narrow it down to Kawaki and Jigen. This is fairly obvious since Jura's body composition and hairstyle resembles theirs, similar to how the other Shinju resembled their counterparts. Now, some would mention Jonin number 616 who got bitten by one of the Clawgrams, mainly due to the fact that he has a mohawk similar to Kawaki. But the issue is, while he does have a similar hairstyle to some extent, his body composition is totally different, along with the fact that he doesn't have the ability to fly. Keep in mind that Jura was the only Shinju that displayed the ability to fly at that point in time, and when you take into context the purpose of showing each of their unique abilities back then, narratively speaking, was to hint towards who got cloned, which would imply that this is the ability he gained from the person he copied. This then narrows the field down to Kawaki since he's the only person who looks similar to Jura, obsessed with Naruto, whilst also possessing the ability to fly, as seen in chapter 1, which is very important because they made it a point to show Kawaki flying before doing the same with Jura, and I think that was done on purpose. With that said, this then leads us to the how. How were they able to clone Kawaki when he wasn't turned into a tree? Well, this all goes back to why they turned into a tree and how the Shinju were formed. You see, we're going under the assumption that you have to be turned into a tree for you to be copied, when that was never said. What we do know is that the chakra the Clawgrams consumed by devouring humans was then used to create the Shinju. So what this implies is that the act of turning into a tree isn't what's necessary. What's needed is the consumption of chakra. In fact, it's also implied in the conversation between Sarada and Jonin 617 whatever, that the Clawgrams turning into a tree is actually a defect of them consuming the chakra of non-Otsutsukis. So this simply means that if a Clawgram consumed the chakra of an Otsutsuki, it wouldn't turn into a failed divine tree. It also wouldn't turn into a real divine tree since they would also need to consume the Otsutsuki themselves for that to happen. This then brings us to chapter 2, when Kawaki was attacked and held down by a simple Clawgram, which is likely when it was able to absorb some of his chakra. Now, one would argue that it didn't bite him, so how did it absorb his chakra? Well, that's where the Renegon comes in. You see, this was the only Clawgram we've ever seen manifest the Renegon, and this only happened after Kawaki interacted with it. This likely means that the Ten Tails was able to somehow sense that he was an Otsutsuki, then transmitted more power and its Renegon into that Clawgram, the one that was closest to Kawaki. Not to mention the fact that it then started to speak, showing early signs of consciousness. It wouldn't be wild to believe that the main Renegon of the Ten Tails has the ability to absorb chakra, which would then pass down to any Clawgram that possessed it. So in this case, it didn't need to bite Kawaki. It would just need to absorb his chakra by simply holding on to him, as seen with any Renegon user who had that ability. Oh, and by the way, this isn't anything new. The white Zetsu that were created by the prior Ten Tails had the ability to consume or copy someone's personality and physical appearance by simply touching them and absorbing their chakra. So it might even be the case here as well. Now, there of course is a difference between the two powers, which is that the Shinju also possess their memories and powers and abilities, unlike the white Zetsus. So maybe this is a more advanced version of it or something totally different. With that said, some might argue that the Clawgram was destroyed and didn't turn into a tree, so how did the Ten Tails get that chakra? Well, for one, we don't in fact know that it needs to turn into a tree to send the chakra, since the story implies that turning into a tree is actually a defect. What is more likely is that the Clawgrams are able to transmit the chakra to the Ten Tails using the claw marks on their bodies, which are also on the body of the Ten Tails. That would explain how they also transmit the chakra of the other tree people to the Ten Tails in another dimension. So as you can see, this all makes sense if you really wanted to. Kawaki, from all the options, all the possibilities, makes the most sense. The Jura Shinju matches Kawaki the most. He possesses Kawaki's ability to fly and shares the same physical characteristics, along with similar stances with their hands in their pockets, just a few chapters apart. They're also very different as well personality-wise. Kawaki is a hothead and very erratic, while Jura is mostly calm and composed. This lines up with what Ikimoto said in a recent interview. He was posed this question: how do you decide the personalities and speech styles of the Divine Tree people? For example, Ryu comes off very differently from his human base model Shinki. Why is that? He then goes on to say that everyone creates a face for society to some extent. We adapt in order to function socially in various settings. But the Divine Tree people have just newly awoken to self-consciousness and haven't learned to do that as yet. So they're merely reflecting their base models. If they come off differently from their base models, it may actually mean that the Divine Tree people or the Divine Tree person is the one showing the true face of their original. So in essence, how Jura behaves is the true face of the person he copied. Obviously, this wouldn't make sense for the Tento since it's a mindless beast on its own. But if that person was Kawaki, it would make sense. He is a version of Kawaki who wasn't shaped by his experiences and later adapted to how he behaves today. So Jura might be the combination of Kawaki and the Tentos, and that is what influences how he moves and speaks and just operates in general. It makes sense, again, if you wanted to. But that's it for the video. If you guys liked it, drop a like. If you're new, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.